In a time when observing the true, unadulterated Sabbath seems out of step with our self-seeking, fast-paced world, he still calls it his mark for his people. Our Creator never changes. Thus, if we want to be marked as his, we would do well to heed the fourth commandment. For only he can give us salvation. We simply cannot produce it for ourselves. Humble compliance will produce blessings from Yahuwah. Defiance and endless arguing against the Sabbath will only result in ultimate condemnation. The Creator considered the Sabbath so important, so necessary for his human creation, that he himself kept it. In fact, the crowning achievement of his creation of the vast universe, the last act he performed, was to rest on the seventh day. The Creator's example is unmistakable. The fourth commandment, requiring Sabbath observance, is as important as the 9 other commandments in the royal law. Shalom, shalom! So if you've watched me for any amount of time, you know that I have spoken many, many times about the Creator's timepiece. We've broken down creation and how Enoch explains what we find in the Dead Sea Scrolls. Our Creator made it very, very simple. He created man and placed him in Gan Eden, in the Garden of Eden, in the covered over protected garden of time. And he taught this man, whom he called Adam, how to read time, how to read the time that Yahuwah created. And he told Adam to watch for the due east sunrise. And he told him that this way you will know and never lose my Sabbaths. Because at the due east sunrise, you will know my Sabbath will arrive in 3 days. Now, isn't it interesting that Yahuwah gave Moses 3 days for the Hebrews to consecrate themselves before coming before him? Exodus 19, 10, and 11. And Yahuwah said to Moses, "Go to the people and sanctify them today and tomorrow, and let them wash their clothes, and be ready for the 3rd day. For on the 3rd day Yahuwah will go down before the eyes of the people and on the mountain of Sinai." So here, Yahuwah is telling Moses, you have 3 days to prepare, and Yahuwah tells Adam, watch for the due east sunrise, because you'll know in 3 days is my Sabbath, my first Sabbath of creation. So that way you will never lose it. Now, of course, the sun rises from the east each morning, but there's only one day in the spring where it rises exactly due east. All other days rise either to the north or to the south of due east, depending on the season. When we look at the definition of due east, it's a noun, and it means the cardinal compass point that is at 90 degrees. So the sun, and you can look back in our video playlists, you can look back in our video playlist and see how we've tracked this year after year after year, and the sun moves back and forth from north to south during the year, depending on the season. And when it gets to the middle of the year, or the middle of this circuit in the spring, and again in the fall, we have the equinox, the equal, when we equalize in the heavens. And that equalization day is when the sun rises due east at that 90-degree point, at that 90-degree cardinal compass point. It's pretty simple. This is how Yahweh made it. Keep it simple, silly. It's the KISS system. Sadly, though, there are some teachers that are leading others into this false narrative that once the due east sunrise is noted, then we wait for the next Wednesday on the Gregorian calendar to start the year. This is what they're teaching. Can you imagine this conversation between the Creator and Adam? It would go something like this. So this is Yahuwah speaking to Adam. Now, my son, this is how you will never lose the creation Sabbath. Watch for the due east rising of the great big ball of fire I placed in the heavens for you to use as a marker, as an oath, a sign, and then wait. Adam looking at Yahuwah and saying, wait, Abba? He's a little confused. And Yahuwah says, yes, son, then wait for Wednesday. And Adam, really perplexed, looking towards the heaven and asking, what is a Wednesday, Abba? And Yahuwah replies, something man will create in several thousand years. I don't think that is how that conversation went. Do you? I mean, really, it's pretty ridiculous when you really, really think about it. When we wait in order to keep the Sabbath on a named day, it removes it from the celestial fixed seventh day. And I do not think that was a conversation that Yahuwah, our Creator, was having with Adam in the garden. Wait for Wednesday, my son. What is a Wednesday, Father? I don't even know what that is. No one knew what that was until thousands of years later when the Romans created it. It was not the original part of creation. And when you carry it over, when you carry that seventh day, that Sabbath over into the new cycle, creation was just one cycle that we walk through. It was one Hagag pilgrim circular cycle. We walk through it cycle after cycle. This cycle happens to be called a year. And year after year, we walk through the same cycle. If we let the Sabbath of creation carry over into the new cycle without letting the cycle set the Sabbath with creation, you then will have a Sabbath showing up on day 6 of creation, then day 5 of creation, and then day 4, and so on for 6 years. And a leap year will advance it 2 days out of sync with creation. And eventually, after the 6th or 7th year, it will catch back up. But again, the cycle will be out of sync the rest of the time. Because nowhere was Adam told to wait. So today I want to talk about 2 biblical events, 2 biblical witnesses that confirm the calendar of Yahweh's creation. One witness from the Tanakh and one witness from the Brit Chadashah. First, the story of Jericho. Now, this story is full of Sabbath debates. Some proclaim that it was an uninterrupted 7 days of marching, and that it was okay by Yahuwah that they did this on the Sabbath day too, as there had to be a Sabbath day sometime within those 7 days, right? Well, unless you are a loony who uses the lunar, and then you can kind of twist that even too. I know, because I used to be a loony, and I would teach those twists and turns. But you have to twist it to make it work. But anyway, we're not going down that rabbit trail. We're talking about the 7 days of marching. And if we follow the 7-day Sabbath cycle, somewhere in a 7-day period, there has to be a Sabbath. These who claim that it was okay to do this on the Sabbath day, their reasoning is that they merely went for a Sabbath day's walk. That circling Jericho did not violate the man-made distance allowed. That there's this magic number that we can walk on the Sabbath day that's okay. And so they were just kind of, taking this nice, peaceful Sabbath day walk around Jericho. But, hello? They were in full battle armament and ready for war. Clearly, this is against the Creator's rules for Shabbat. They weren't just carrying their shofars and marching around and having just a gay old time. Actually, they were told not even to speak. So they were silently walking around Jericho until they're told to blow the shofar, right? I think most of us know this story. But the problem with this is we're also instructed not to do anything laboriously, endure, or bear continuously on the Sabbath day. Jeremiah tells us this in Jeremiah 17:21 and 22. And he says, so says Yahuwah, take heed for the sake of your lives, and do not carry a burden on the Sabbath day, nor bring it by the gates of Jerusalem. And do not carry a burden from your houses on the Sabbath day, nor do any work, but keep the Sabbath day holy as I commanded your fathers. Now, I've also heard this word burden to be described as your troubles, your woes. Don't carry your woes into the Sabbath day. Don't carry your worldly burdens into the Sabbath day. And I can see where we wouldn't want to do that. But that's not what he's telling us, and we'll get to that in a minute. So this directive of not working, not carrying burdens on the Sabbath day is so important to our Creator that he charged a man to be stoned to death for picking up sticks on the Shabbat. Numbers 15, starting with verse 32. And while the sons of Israel were in the wilderness, they found a man gathering sticks on the Sabbath day. And those who found him gathering sticks brought him to Moses and Aaron and to all the congregation. Verse 34, and they put him under guard, for it had not been declared what should be done to him. The Sabbath was new to them, and so they weren't really quite sure of all the rules yet for the Sabbath day. And Yahuwah said to Moses, dying the man shall die. All the congregation shall stone him with stones outside the camp. They were going to make an example of him. One that the camp will never forget, so they don't think that it's okay, wink, wink, to go pick up a few sticks. And all the congregation brought him out of the camp and stoned him with stones, and he died, as Yahuwah commanded Moses. Now, it would have been different if he had just been picking them up in order to keep somebody from stumbling over them, if he was watching out for his brother. But he wasn't doing that. He was picking them up in order to kindle a fire, which is also against the Sabbath instructions. So what does it mean exactly to bear a burden then? And we look at the Hebrew lexicon definition and the word NASA. I know I hear so many people, so many things I see on social media, this false narrative that NASA means deceived. Please don't get me started. That is Nashah, means deceived or beguiled. That's what the serpent did to Eve. He nashad her, not nasad her. He nashad her. Totally different thing. He deceived her. Nasa doesn't mean deceived or lies or anything else. Nasa simply means to lift up, to be lifted up, be exalted, to bear, carry, support, sustain, endure, to borne or be carried, to cause one to bear. Okay? So the Strong Concordance word is 5375. And it means to advance, arise, able to armor, so you're bearing armor, suffer, to bear, to bring forth, to carry, to lift up. So what we have here is the army of Israel, the Hebrew army in full battle armor, with weapons in hand and adrenaline pumping. Yahweh definitely does not want us to be in that state on his Shabbat day of rest and worship. Looking at the word Shabbat, we find it to be an intermission, to repose, that is, desist from exertion. Well, I don't know about you, but taking a small hike around Jericho would cause me exertion. And it means to rest. But readying for battle most certainly is the epitome of exertion. The lesson we learn from this battle is as two-sided as Joshua's battle sword. This battle is more than a mere lesson in obedience, but rather it proves once again the creation calendar being fulfilled in the scriptures. So let's take a look. Starting with Joshua 6, verse 2. And Eloah said to Joshua, See, I have given Jericho unto your hand, and its king and mighty men of war. And you shall go around the city. All the men of war go around the city once. You shall go do for 6 days. And 7 priests shall bear 7 trumpets of ram's horns in front of the ark. And on the 7th day you shall go around the city 7 times, and the priests shall blow with the trumpets. Joshua 6:5. And it shall be when they take a long blast with the ram's horn, and when you hear the sound of the trumpet, all the people shall shout with a great shout, and the wall of the city shall fall down flat, and the people shall go up, each man straight before him. Verse 6, and Joshua the son of Nun called the priest and said to them, Take up the ark of the covenant, and let 7 priests carry 7 ram's horns in front of the ark of Eloah. We can clearly see that the army of Israel is getting their battle orders. The priests are instructed to carry the ram's horns, and the Levites will be carrying the ark of the covenant, because only the Levites are allowed to touch the ark without the penalty of death. So we have the priests, the Levites, and the men of war. Joshua 6:7, and he said to the people, Pass on and go around the city, and let him who is armed pass on in front of the ark of Eloah. Joshua 6:8, and it happened when Joshua had spoken to the people, the 7 priests bearing the 7 ram's horn passed on before Yahuwah and blew the ram's horn, and the ark of the covenant followed them. Now the Apostolic Bible Polyglot says that the 7 priests having 7 consecrated trumpets also went likewise before Yahuwah, and they passed and signified. Now that word signified, well, it says, and they passed and signified intensely. So that word signified means stood boldly, and intensely means mightily or vehemently. So they passed boldly and mightily and vehemently. They passed. I mean, I'm telling you, this was serious business. They were not messing around. So it wasn't a skip to my loo on the Sabbath day. Whatever day that was in this week, which we'll figure that out. And the armed men went before the priest who blew the ram's horn, and the gathering army came after the ark, as the priests were going on and blowing with the ram's horn. And Joshua had commanded the people, saying, "You shall not shout, nor make any noise with your voice, neither shall any word come out of your mouth until the day I tell you to shout, then you shall shout." He was giving them their instructions on a need-to-know basis. So they go in, and now they're going to make their intentions known to Jericho. I mean, they've been camping just east of Jericho. The people of Jericho knew they were there. It wasn't like a surprise. And I'm sure they were probably wondering what was going to happen with the Hebrews. I mean, we have to think about what was happening there. Okay, Joshua and the Israelites, they just crossed the Jordan. So from the 10th day of the first month, they were doing all of the stuff. After they'd crossed the Jordan, they had to set up camp, they had to prepare for Passover, they had to circumcise all the men in the camp, and then they had to heal from that. So while this was all happening, Jericho, the people of Jericho, are seeing some activity going on, and they are not quite sure really yet what's going to happen. I mean, you can imagine if you were in that situation and you see in the distance these troops of people just setting up camp not far from you. And you've heard stories about them. And so the Ark of Eloah went around the city once, and they came to camp and lodged. They tarried in the camp. This is Joshua 6:11. Now remember, our Creator is a great commander of armies. He's the great commander of hosts. And as with any battle, timing is everything. He commanded the Hebrews to come marching in around Jericho to make their presence known, blowing their trumpets only once, then marching off must have had the people of Jericho shaking in their sandals. I mean, like I was saying, can you imagine? So this group of people now suddenly are just making this quietly circling around your fortified walls, and they blow this trumpet. Their priests are blowing these trumpets, just one blast. And you're in Jericho going, "Oh my gosh, what are they doing? These crazy Hebrews! What's going on?" And and you can imagine that they're scared, right? So, and it would seem kind of odd, really. I mean, they're not attacking. They're just circling and blowing the shofar, and then they marched off. I mean, I know I'd be standing there in kind of bewilderment, like, what are these crazy fools doing? I don't know, but it's kind of scary. Okay, but this maneuver gave the Hebrews time. It gave them time to observe the Sabbath day as they tarried in camp. Joshua 6:11. And the Ark of Eloah went around the city, going around it once. And they came into the camp and lodged. They tarried in the camp. This is the Hebrew, the King James Version. And we want to read from the Greek, from the Apostolic Bible Polyglot, and it reads, also Joshua 6:11. And the Ark of the Covenant of Eloah, having gone around the city round about, immediately, now it says they immediately went forth into the camp and spent the night there. So why was it important to immediately go to camp? This is the only verse throughout the whole 7-day story where we're told they stayed in camp. They immediately went and stayed. They lodged. So let's take a look at the word lodged. And in the Hebrew, it is 3885. And it's loon. a primitive root word meaning to stop, remain, tarry, like we said, to tarry. All the corresponding Greek and Hebrew words give us the sense of a prolonged stay. And we read in the Greek where it said they spent the night there. And we look at that phrase, and it's the Greek 2837. And it means to put to sleep, to slumber, to decease, or figuratively, to sleep like the dead, sleep or be dead. So leaving the people of Jericho wondering what was going to happen next, I imagine they were rushing around, getting prepared for battle themselves, fortifying their walls, setting up their guards, their watches, while the Israelite army was able to sleep like the dead on the Shabbat. Had they not did that one event and just rushed right into battle, they would not have been given this extra time. I mean, it's amazing to me when I really see what Yahuwah was doing there. And the Book of Jubilees also tells us that it is forbidden to make war on the Shabbat. We read in Jubilees 50, 12, and 13. And every man who does any work thereon, or goes on a journey, talk about the Sabbath, or tills his farm, whether in his house or any other place, and whoever lights a fire or rides on any beast, or who strikes or kills anything, or slaughters a beast, or a bird, or whoever catches an animal, or a bird or a fish. So we have a whole list of things that go on here. Whoever fasts or makes war on the Sabbaths. The man who does any of these things on the Sabbath shall die, so that the children of Israel shall observe the Sabbaths according to the commandments regarding the Sabbath of the land, as is written in the tablets. And then he goes on to say, herein is completed the account of the division of days. So in Jubilees, we're told that we're not to make war on the Sabbath. Again, somewhere in that 7-day march had to have been a Sabbath day. We already see that this was an army in full armament. They were armed and getting ready for battle. So I, for one, have a hard time buying into the whole idea that the Hebrews were only going for a friendly Sabbath day walk around Jericho. The Book of Records, or more commonly known as the Book of Jasher, gives us more detail as to when this battle was actually taking place. And this will make a lot more sense now. Jasher 88:14. And it was in the 2nd month on the Rosh Chodesh of the month. So the Rosh Chodesh of the month is the head of the month, the first day of the 2nd month. Then Eloah said to Joshua, rise up, behold, I have given Jericho into thy hand, with all the people thereof, and all your fighting men shall go around the city one each day. Thus shall you do for 6 days. And the priest shall blow the trumpets. Okay, so we know what their instructions were, and Jasher just reaffirms that. But it tells us when this battle was happening, the head of the 2nd month. Jasher 88:16, and Joshua did according to all Eloah had commanded. So this account in Jasher follows right along with the account in the scriptures in Joshua, in the book of Joshua. But Joshua doesn't tell us exactly what day it was, like Jasher does. So now that we have our starting point, which is the first day of the 2nd month, Joshua and the Hebrew army rose up that day as commanded by Yahuwah. So with all this knowledge, we can now piece together what Joshua's week planner would have looked like. So if we look at this week's calendar, we can see that the Kodesh of the 2nd month always lands on the 6th day of the week. the second month of each season will always start on day 6. You have 3 months in each season, and it's a continuing cycle for each season, and each month in the season is the repeat of the previous season. So month 1 of season 1 looks the same as month 1 of season 2. Month 2 of season 1 looks the same as month 2 of season 2. Okay? So we're month 2 of season 1. And the month starts on the 6th day of the week. So we see that Joshua marched around Jericho one time. Then they returned to camp and tarried. This is the only place in this whole 7-day event that we're told that they returned to camp and lodged, tarried, lingered. They had a prolonged stay. Then we're told on day 2 of the march, not day 2 of the week, but day 2 of the march, Joshua rose at daybreak. And they continued around Jericho for the next 6 days. And on that last day, the 7th day of the event, of the campaign, of the Jericho campaign, this is a military campaign we're looking at here. So on that 7th and last day, we read Joshua 6:15, and it happened on the 7th day, they rose early, and at dawning of the day, and circled the city the same way 7 times. Only on that day, they did go around the city 7 times. And it happened in the 7th time, when the priest blew the ram's horn, Joshua said to the people, "Shout!" Hey! Israel marched around Jericho 7 days. Once a day for 6 days, but on the 7th day they marched around Jericho 7 times. 6 plus 7 is a total of 13 circuits around Jericho. Ever wonder why the number 13 was considered bad luck? Again, Hallel, perverting the things that are sacred to Eloah, as Eloah destroys and commands that Hallel's moon calendar of Jericho is never to be rebuilt. Jericho, known as the city of palm trees or the year city, it is also known as the city of the moon or the crescent moon. Putting both moon and year together, you have a lunar year. James Fawcett Brown Bible Commentary, Volume 1, reads this about Jericho. And it reads, Jericho. Some derive this name from the word signifying new moon, in reference to the crescent-like plane in which it stood. Jericho was the crescent city, the moon city. In the Strong's Concordance, Jericho is defined in the Hebrew 3391 as a lunation, and 3394 is Yirak, the moon. Because Jericho was the center for moon worship, the first thing Yahweh had Israel do was to destroy the pagan moon worship system, and at the same time reestablish his own priestly calendar and moedim. Joshua 6:26. And Joshua charged them at that time, saying, Cursed before Eloah is the man who rises up and builds the city of Jericho. He shall lay the foundation of it in his firstborn, and his youngest son he shall set up the gates of it. The Battle of Jericho is more about Yahweh's creation calendar than it is about a conquest for Israel. We can see here how the timing worked out of the Sabbath day, where within this campaign to take down Jericho, they marched the first day, went to camp, They tarried, they lodged, they observed the Sabbath day. And then on the first day of the week, the second go around Jericho, they continued on until the sixth day of the week, which was the seventh day of the campaign, and they took possession of the city. Follows the creation calendar perfectly. So, in my second witness, we're going to talk about Paul, where we can find in the book of Acts where Paul is traveling after Passover. Acts 20, verse 6. And we sailed across after the days of unleavened bread from Philippi, and came to them in Troas unto 5 days, where we spent 7 days. Now Paul indicates that they left the day after the Feast of Unleavened. This would have been the 22nd day of the first month. Counting out 5 days of travel would have brought us to the 26th day of the month. So, 26th of the month is the first day of the week, and it's also the day of first fruits. So you can imagine he was excited to get there with his buds, with his guys, first fruits. I'm coming, people, we're going to hang out for a week. He said he stayed 7 days. So he came on first fruits, arrived, first day of his visit, last day of travel. They traveled 5 days. He arrives, first fruits. That's the first day of his visit. And he stayed 7. So you count. If he's arrived on the first day, that's the first day of his visit. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That takes us to Shabbat, which would have been the first Shabbat of the second month. We look at the calendar here. We're just counting days with Paul. We're not making anything up. We're just counting the days. And he's telling us how to count them. So in the LXX, it says, and on one of the Sabbaths, the disciples having been gathered to break bread, Paul reasoned with them, being about to exit the next day, and he extended the word until midnight. So he's going to leave on the first day of the week, and it's Sabbath. They gathered together, and they're having a meal, a Sabbath day meal together, and they're conversing, and they're talking, and I'm sure they're talking about scripture, and catching up, and preaching the word. Paul's preaching the word, and of course, not to go down that rabbit trail, but he heals a boy on that day, and some stuff is happening during the Sabbath, okay? And you can read more in Acts about the healing of this boy. I'm not going to go into it here on this lesson. But so it's the Sabbath day. We've counted that out now. And also, the Bishop's Bible, 1568, it reads, and upon one of the Sabbath days, when the disciples came together to break bread, Paul reasoned with them, ready to depart on the morrow, and continued the word unto midnight. Now, some say it was day 1 of the Sabbaths, okay? So, let's look at this for a minute. Day 1 of the Sabbaths actually means day 1 of the week, because they would count day 1 of the Sabbaths, day 2 of the Sabbaths, day 3 of the Sabbaths. So you have to look at the wording. The day 1 of the Sabbaths would have been the first day of the week. But that is not what the original language says. And we can also see, when we count out the days, as Paul describes, that he is in fact arriving and leaving on day 1 of the week. How do we know this? Because we know that the last day of unleavened bread is always on the 3rd day of the week, according to many scrolls found in Qumran. But here I'll just show you the scroll 4Q325. It's talking about some of the Passover. It says the Passover is on the 14th of the month, on the 3rd day of the week. On the 18th of the month is the Sabbath of Jehoiarib. And then the Passover ends on the 3rd day of the week in the evening. And on the 25th of the month is the Sabbath of Jedediah. and its responsibilities include the barley festival on the 26th of the month after the Sabbath. The beginning of the second month is on the 6th day of the week. So we're told this in the scroll, that the beginning of the second month is on the 6th day of the week. We saw that in the Jericho event. Okay? So, but here we're looking at the Passover ends on the third day of the week in the evening. And scroll after scroll, the temple scrolls tell us the same thing, that Passover always ends on the third day of the week. Therefore, if the last day of the feast was on the third day of the week, then Paul began his travels on day 4 of the week and traveled 5 days, which does land us then on the first day of the week. We can't deny the numbers. We can't switch them around. These are solid facts. We know when the feast ended, what day of the week it had to end on, year after year. We're told this in the Dead Sea Scrolls, in several of the scrolls that confirm this. So, the Passover is ended. He travels the 5 days. This lands us on day 1. Arriving on day 1 of the week would also then be day 1 of his visits. 7 days, of course, that brings us to the Sabbath, where he met with his people and talked until midnight. So then Paul leaves and travels on to finish out his business as he's trying to return to Jerusalem in time for Shavuot. And he has a bunch of travels ahead of him. But here we can clearly see that he is counting out the days after Passover. He did observe the true Sabbath of creation, him and his followers. We see this with the Jericho campaign and again with Paul's travels. This is just 2 witnesses in the scripture where the creation calendar is being followed by people in the Bible. Yahweh gave this information to Adam, and he gave it to Enoch, and he gave it to Moses and Noah, and to all of the patriarchs, and the prophets knew the correct counting of time. The Messiah knew the correct counting of time. For the last year, I have been in deep study following the Messiah's footsteps through the Enochian calendar to see if it aligns up. And the things I have found have amazed me. Yahshua did not follow the Sabbath of the Pharisees. And soon I will be able to present that to you. But for today, we're going to close in saying that these 2 witnesses out of both the Tanakh and Brit Hadashah gives us insight to the true division of days. Again, there's no waiting. Our Creator makes his timepiece simple. Watch for the due east rising of the sun. Count your days as prescribed in Scripture. The first thing our Creator did was teach the Hebrews how to count. He says, mark the month of Aviv. You mark it with the great sign in the sky. Ecclesiastes tells us we can't make straight what the Father bends. We can't make the shadows of the sun straight when he bends them, because only the Creator can tell us when the straight line shadow is. When the sun rises due east, it creates only on that day all shadows to be straight. Otherwise, there's a curve to them. It's not hard. We don't mark the straight line and then wait for a curve. Solomon even tells us not to do, we can't do that. We can't make the bent line straight. Only on the straight line, only on the due east rising of the sun marks the 4th day, so that we never lose track of the original Sabbath day, the seventh day. Don't let it fall out of sync. There's one cycle to creation. Only one cycle. The Sabbath day is a feast day. It's an annual feast day that we observe every 7 days within the cycle. Just like all the feast days are annual in the main first cycle. That first cycle, we just repeat it over and over again. When you carry it over to the next cycle, the Sabbath day is then out of sync with creation. Not Yahweh's intention. Keep it simple, friends. Keep it simple. So, for now, I hope that these two witnesses can be proof that we don't, at least that we don't wait till Wednesday to start the year, and that two witnesses give us the exact counts that we need to prove the calendar that Enoch brought forth that we find in the Dead Sea Scrolls. So please don't be fooled by these teachers whose only agenda is to follow traditions of men. So until we meet again, I'm going to wish you shalom, shalom.
Shalom, shalom.